Welcome to our short podcast today, What I'd Wished I'd Known as an Unpaid Working Carer. I'm Catherine, the Employees for Carers Officer at Carers Wales. I have been a working carer myself, although didn't identify as a working carer at the time, and it was only through coming to Carers Wales and working with EFC members that I realised that what I was doing was actually undertaking quite a significant caring role. I'm joined today by Jane, who's previously been an unpaid working carer and who is happy to share some key tips and insights. So, welcome, Jane, and thank you for chatting with me today.
My pleasure, Catherine. Thank you for having me. And I'm really delighted to share some of my insights and experience with you today.
Great, thank you. So, would you be happy to share with me a little bit about your caring responsibilities?
Yes, Catherine, I'm more than happy to do that, as I really do feel it's important to be able to talk about caring, not just in the workplace, but in day-to-day life. We know caring is part of life and something that we should be able to and not feel guilty or ashamed to talk about. You never expect to be a carer, but I have since learned that it can happen to any one of us at any time. I've had a number of different care responsibilities and they've all been very different. And the first was when I was much younger, for a period of 5 years for somebody I lived with. Then in more recent years for my parents before they passed away, and more currently for my mum-in-law who has struggled with mental health issues. And added to that, for my mum-in-law is a long trip up and down the motorway, so caring remotely whilst keeping an eye on my husband to make sure he was coping too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's important to recognise as well that, like Jane was saying, caring can happen at any time. I know I certainly didn't expect to be a carer, and it did happen pretty much overnight for me. So I can totally relate to that and identify with that as well. And so, as I've touched on as well, and I know a lot of people have the same thing. We know that unpaid working carers are often the last to identify and seek out support. So, if someone's just starting out on their caring journey, Jane, could you share some of the things that you wish you'd known and some of the things that might help others on their way?
Absolutely, because it was really alien to me. I didn't know that I was moving into a role with care responsibilities. So I would absolutely say that the very first thing I wish I'd known was that I was actually a carer. I had no idea. The word carer didn't relate or resonate with me. It was what somebody else did, really, and I was just doing what any one of us would do for a loved one or a family member. But because of that, it's made me really passionate in supporting others that are new to caring or have been caring for a number of years and have yet to identify, because I know I missed out on so much support, both within the workplace and externally, by not embracing that word. So I wish I'd known I was actually a carer much sooner. In the workplace, I did struggle on and didn't want to talk about my care responsibilities. And some of that was, misplaced fear that I would be judged. In fact, when I had that conversation, it was a really positive conversation. And I did, but prior to speaking with my line manager, I was using all of my annual leave for hospital appointments and emergencies. And even on a couple of occasions, rocking up to work straight after a night in the hospital after an emergency, not looking my best. I did feel exhausted, scared, and completely unprepared on how to keep all of those balls in the air. So, what I wish I'd known more about was caring and how it can impact life very suddenly or creep up unawares. We know that caring can be rewarding to look after family or friends, but I know without support, I was actually going to struggle to balance work and care.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, um, whether it's because you don't know you're a carer or whether because you're afraid to say you're a carer, I think it can also become very isolating as well. And that is one of the goals of Carers Wales, is to make sure that no one's caring alone, because there's um, so much to deal with when you enter into that caring role, that I think, just making sure that you have that support, whether it's in the workplace or outside of the workplace, is vital.
Absolutely, Catherine. I couldn't agree with you more there. Yeah.
So, what would you say to anyone who was new to caring or had just recognised themselves as a carer?
So for me, I had no idea that there were others out there experiencing exactly the same or very similar to what I was going through. I really didn't know that other families were impacted by it. So I would absolutely say when the penny drops and you actually realise that you have caring responsibilities, to talk to someone. Talk to anyone, talk to someone. Don't wait until you've reached crisis or emergency or you've made yourself ill. I didn't talk to anyone and I did make myself ill. But I would really encourage anyone to tell your GP, register as a carer, tell people you work with, talk with your friends and family, and ask for help. And in work, definitely talk to your line manager. Now, that might feel really scary. For me, what helped me to prepare for that conversation was to write everything down, just to write everything I wanted to say down and book some time in to have that conversation with my line manager. And all of that, prepping for the conversation and writing things down, really helped me to manage my emotions during the conversation. And what happened then was that there was support unlocked that I didn't know was available to me and I hadn't even considered. So by having that conversation with my line manager, she was then able to signpost me to lots of workplace support that I had known was available.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say on that as well, that we have published a working carers guide where there are hints and tips about having conversations with your line manager. And not only that, but also it can be a great tool for line managers as well if you think you've got someone in your team with caring responsibilities. So we'll signpost you to that in more detail in a bit. But just so you know, there is support available as well. So Jane, what other support was available that you didn't know about?
Yeah, I'll come to that in a moment if that's okay, Catherine. But you just made a really good point about support for line managers as well, because as a line manager in a previous organisation, had I known about the support that was out there, and having working carers within my team, I would have been able to signpost them much earlier to the support that is available. So yeah, it's a really important point you raised there. But some of the other support that I didn't know about, I didn't know that every single carer is entitled to a carer's needs assessment, regardless of the amount or type of care you provide. And there might just be support for you to help with having a life outside of caring, whether that be in work or in education. So I'd say check out the benefits that you may be entitled to. I also didn't know about all of the support and information through Carers Wales, and there's some brilliant resources through Carers Wales, such as the Me Time sessions and the listening support service, which has been so invaluable. And all of that support would have helped me to feel much less isolated, as you said earlier on, Catherine. Carers often feel isolated. But knowing that there are others out there in a similar situation that I could talk to would have helped enormously to help me feel less alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so, Jane, as a final thought, what would your top tips be for any current or new working carers?
That's a good one, actually, Catherine. And I have had loads. I have got loads of tips, actually, but I think I'll just keep it to my main four, because otherwise I'd be waxing lyrical for a while. But absolutely, my top tips would be number one, recognise you are a carer and absolutely deserve support. And once you've had that support and self-identified and recognised the support that's available to you, help others to find out about the support that you're utilising or that might be appropriate to them. So I think we can all raise awareness of care responsibilities by sharing some of our top tips and some of the support that we get as well. So yeah, recognise your carer and you deserve that support. I also wished I'd asked for help from friends and family sooner, and I wished I'd talked to my line manager sooner. So I would definitely say get talking about your care responsibilities, and don't wait until you've reached crisis. Talk about them as soon as you really identify, and having having that conversation might just help someone else who hasn't identified as a carer. I would also say find out about the support available to you at work and locally through some of the groups. Look at the benefits that you might be entitled to, and definitely join up and sign up to Carers Wales newsletter and look at the support and information on their website, because there is so much there. But my most important top tip, and key tip actually, is to take up that support. don't feel guilty about taking up that support. It's really, really important to look after yourself too. You have to look after yourself to be able to continue with your care responsibility. So I would say my top tip would be to take up whatever support is out there and whatever works for you, and really do look after yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd echo that as well about looking after yourself. I think carers are probably the least likely to get support for themselves, and the priorities of the person they're caring for tend to kind of overtake that. But yeah, definitely look after yourself and make that a priority. Thank you so much, Jane, for all of that. I hope you found it as useful as I have to hear about Jane's caring journey and what she found useful. I would say as well that, as Jane's already said, visit Carers Wales website. So that's carerswales.org to find out about all the support. So Jane's touched on some of it with the Me Time sessions and the Wellbeing Hub, and the Listening Support Service. And we also have the Working Carers Hub as well, where the Working Carers Guide that I touched on earlier is there, as well as a Working Carers animation. And hopefully that will just help you to have a sort of a first stop for support if you either you feel you're in a caring you've got caring responsibility yourself, or if you feel you've got someone in your team with caring responsibilities. So I hope you found that useful, and please let us know if you need any further support by using the contact details on the website. And yeah, thank you very much for joining us.